And welcome back once again. Michael and I joined now by Scott Milleisen of J.P. Morgan for our State of Sports discussion. And Scott's going to help us focus on the NFL. Let's talk about Roger Goodell. The commissioner has come out and said he envisions expansion. But when he did that, he talked about adding 2 teams to keep it even. And I think, Scott, all along we've operated that maybe some teams would move. So what's the most viable alternative here?
Yeah, it's interesting. I assure you that no matter what the NFL elects to do, they're going to be extremely thoughtful about it. Historically, we thought, exactly as you said, that we might have a relocation, potentially the Rams or the Chargers or someone else. So this prospect of league expansion, which really no one had considered, is a very interesting notion.
Do you think the commissioner feels more comfortable about possibly expanding given the rich new TV deals the league now has with ESPN and the broadcasters?
It's an interesting point. When you bring new teams into the league, what it naturally does is dilute down some of the other owners in terms of what they receive per annum, because they share these revenues equally. Now divide by 32, then you'd be dividing by 34. So, you know, a little bit of lift in the national TV contracts probably would help to soothe that a little bit.
A lot of people have eyes, obviously, on Los Angeles. They want to build a stadium there, maybe downtown.
Yes.
But what would that cost be? Because obviously there are expansion fees, and then you're going into a huge market.
No, I think that's exactly right. You know, rough numbers, it'll cost you $1 billion to build an NFL stadium these days. Franchise values, you know, you had Shad Khan, who bought the Jaguars recently. I think you published that at $760 million. You know, you had the Miami Dolphins not too long ago sell for $1.1 billion. So that's probably the bid-ask spread for a franchise. But now you're talking about the Los Angeles market, the #2 media market in the country. The valuation could exceed, you know, expectations, even that of the Dolphins.
Yeah, and, you know, everyone's talked about L.A. for one team. Where would the second team possibly be? I mean, you know, I've even heard some people mention it could be outside the United States. I mean, as a banker, do you see that as being something that's feasible?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. You know, the NFL is sort of sending up a trial balloon right now. They're thinking about playing, or they're going to play, 1 game a year for the next 3 years in the UK, in London. It's going to be the Rams, as long as they can get their lease situation sorted out. But I think the league would be very excited, and I'm sure they're thinking about expanding internationally. So who knows, maybe that second team could go to the UK.
Now, does that seem like a good fit? Because it is the Rams. Their owner has a piece of a European soccer club.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So there's a guy who obviously understands international sports, and it may be a natural fit for Stan Kroenke to be the guy to shepherd that.
Oh, right. He owns Arsenal, and, you know, Shad Khan, who we've interviewed, and, you know, he mentioned that he really liked the Jaguars to be sort of the flagship brand of the NFL outside of the United States and Europe. You know, he alluded to the fact that rugby's very popular in Germany and the UK, and, you know, football's not too different, really, in terms of what the spectators like to see, that type of action. What would it do to the brand of the Jaguars for playing overseas? Is this something that could really enhance the value of an asset?
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons that the NFL loves Shad Khan, he's a self-made man, and he's an entrepreneur, and he thinks big picture, and they think that he can really bring some energy and maybe some new ideas to the NFL, a different perspective. Going internationally is certain, you know, one possible avenue. In terms of its impact on the franchise directly, I think, you know, global brand recognition would be a big deal for the franchise. You'd probably realize that through appreciation of the franchise as opposed to cash flow, because, as you know, a lot of the revenues are shared. So it'd be good for the NFL overall as you know, sort of expand the appeal and bigger ratings, bigger TV dollars potentially. But for the specific owner, it's probably about appreciation of the franchise.
You know, one term we're hearing a lot with regard to every major sports league is debt limits, and that has changed certainly as the economy has changed. Where do those stand right now, especially with regard to the NFL? Yeah,
in the NFL, they've been at $150 million, which is the senior secured debt limit. That's the most you can borrow at the franchise level. So what people have done is they've levered their stadium assets. In many cases, what we see is it takes a lot of equity in order to buy an NFL franchise. So you ask an interesting question. In the last 10 years, you really haven't seen all that many, relative to the other leagues, you haven't seen many NFL franchises trade for this very reason, because it costs, you know, upwards of $600 million in cash equity to get it done. What we've seen is that people will leverage their personal balance sheets, or they'll use other assets to create liquidity in order to buy the team.
Let's put them on the spot then. Given those debt limits, what type of valuation could we see on 2 expansion teams? Obviously, one will likely be L.A. Let's focus on that one, since we really have no idea where the second one's going to be at this point.
Yeah, well, the last expansion in the NFL was done, almost 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. It was the Houston Texans. That was a $700 million price. They paid for it over the course of 5 years, so when you took the present value, people thought it was maybe slightly less than that. Again, we talked about the Dolphins that sold for $1.1 billion, so that's the high end right now. The L.A. market's even bigger than that, so hard to put a hard number on it, but that's sort of the range, and I'd expect it to exceed the top end of the range.
And even though we're talking about huge money, Is it still a good buy because of the TV deals that the NFL has just redone? They're long-term, they're set, they have the CBA set for a while. Is that a good buy for an owner?
I think so. I'm very bullish on the NFL. Like you said, they've got the national TV contracts that they just reset, huge increases. They've got 10 years of labor peace locked in. In Los Angeles, you're talking about the #2 media market in the country. I think it's a good bet.
All right, Scott, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
That's going to do it for this edition of Forbes Sports Money. We thank all of our guests on the program, and we thank you as well. For Mike Ozanian, I'm Bob Lorenz. We'll see you next time. Take care.